Hey guys, welcome back to Khaleesi Time. Today I am going to recap a 1980 romance drama movie named The Blue Lagoon. So let's begin. The movie starts with a family going on a trip to Europe, including 9-year-old Richard and 7-year-old Emmeline, both of whom are cousins. Richard's father is also there, and there was also a cook who used to cook on that ship. There were other people on this ship. Then suddenly a fire breaks out on the ship, due to which Patty, who is a cook, takes the children and sits in a small boat. Other people were also saved. But due to the burning of the ship, smoke spread everywhere. That's why they couldn't see each other, and Patty gets separated from them. Patty was now alone in the Pacific Ocean, accompanied by 2 small children. Then one morning, when Emma's blind eyes open, so she sees an island, and she immediately shows Patty and Richard the place. Patty gets very happy seeing this and turns the boat towards the island. And all 3 arrive on the island, where there are many birds, fresh water to drink, and plenty of food, making these 3 very happy. Now at least he could live here until they get some help. That's when they get a can of rum filled with rum. That's when Richard finds a human skull there. It means that someone came here before. Seeing all of this, Patty dislikes everything and flees with the children. He also forbids Patty and Emmeline from eating red berries because they are poisonous and eating them kills a person, and Patty teaches Richard fishing, how to build a house and many other things. One night, while the children were sleeping, Patty was drinking rum. Then he hears some sound that's coming from the other side of the island. So the next morning, Patty goes to see the place where he sees flesh and blood on the stone. Seeing this, he immediately runs away from there, and at night he warns the children to never go to another site on the island. Now there was something on that island that Patty was afraid of. One might say that Patty drinks a lot. He dances with the children for a while, and then he falls asleep. They are watching the children as they sleep, but at night, when Patty wakes up after this, he goes to the nearby island. In the morning, when Richard and Emmeline can't find the Patty, they start looking for it, and they see Patty. After this, they both take the boat and reach him, where he sees the children, who are very scared to see that the Patty is dead, and they both leave him there and go away. Now after Patty left, those children were very lonely that night. Emmeline tells Richard to take him to another island. So the next morning they leave that island and take some of their belongings and go to the nearby island, where he follows the things taught by Patty and builds a house for himself. And that's how he starts spending his time, and many years pass by like this. He had matured considerably. They had learned to live here, and they were both happy now that they had grown up. That's why they were getting attracted to each other due to physical changes in their bodies. They started noticing each other unknowingly, but they did not understand this feeling. And no one can explain this feeling to them. This feeling was completely new and stressful for them. One day, Emmeline will be in the water. She sees blood in the water, which she gets scared of, and she immediately calls Richard, but later she sees the blood coming from her body itself. This was his first period when Richard came there, so she saw blood in the water, and he asked Emmeline what happened. Emmeline tells Richard to leave. Later, Richard asks Emmeline why she was bleeding, and Emmeline says that she doesn't know. Richard thinks that Emmeline was hurt and wanted to see her injury, but now she doesn't tell him anything. Richard gets angry with this and leaves from there. He says that you hide many things from me. As time passes, both of them start getting attracted to each other. Emmeline used to keep looking at Richard's body, and Richard also keeps looking at her. One day, Emmeline hears the sound of drums playing somewhere far away, so she goes there to see them. Richard was fishing here when Emmeline saw it. She learns that the sound is coming from another island they had left, and then Emmeline goes further, where she sees the idol. When she goes to her, she sees blood. They're seeing Miss Emily, who runs away in fear and goes to Richard and tells him all these things. Hearing this, Richard scolded her because, since childhood, they had been following the rule that they will never go to the other side of either island, but today Emmeline broke this rule. Then at night, when Emily was sleeping, she has a dream in which she sees that Richard is drowning and that he has died. Emily awakens and becomes terrified when she sees the elephant. She hugs Richard and says, "Promise me that you will never leave me." Richard says, "I promised," and after this, Emmeline also kisses Richard, but Richard is unable to control his feelings and coerce Emmeline, due to which Emmeline gets angry with him and leaves from there. It was night now, and Emmeline was sleeping. Then Richard approaches Emmeline and starts touching him, but Emmeline wakes up, scolds him, and drives him away. Richard was getting attracted to Emmeline, but Emmeline did not understand his feelings. When it is morning, Richard gets angry and starts leaving. Emmeline asks him, "Where are you going?" But Richard doesn't even talk to him. So Emmeline goes after him to try to convince him. She sees that Richard is doing something, but Emmeline doesn't understand what he's doing. She calls out to him. Because of this, Richard becomes even angrier. One day Richard sees a ship in the sea, and he immediately runs towards home because there he has gathered wood to give a signal by burning, which he could do. Emmeline also saw that ship, but she did not intentionally burn the wood. When Richard asks for the reason, Emmeline doesn't answer him properly. It turns out that Emmeline liked this place very much and wanted to stay there now, but Richard didn't want to stay there at all. After so many years, he saw a ship, and Emmeline let it go. After this, Richard makes a raft for himself and leaves for that island alone with some food and water items. But after going a little far from the beach, his raft breaks down, and he comes back, where Emmeline makes fun of him. Also, she says, "I know what you were doing that day." Richard says, "This is wrong if you look at me silently," and Emmeline says, "You also look at me silently when I am without clothes." Richard makes fun of Emmeline and starts teasing her by placing a coconut on his chest, then Emmeline angrily hits a coconut on her head. In return, Richard gives Emmeline a slap, and Richard goes home and throws all of Emma's belongings out of the house. He says that "I have built this house, and you can't stay here because of this." Emmeline has to live in a small cave, and it was raining from above. Due to this quarrel, both of them got separated, and were not even talking to each other anymore. Meanwhile, Emmeline goes to place flowers on the statue, then her foot is placed on a poisonous fish, which makes her very ill. Richard had not seen Emmeline for several days now. So he goes to Emmeline's old cave, where he sees her condition and asks her what happened to her. Emmeline says her foot was placed on a fish that looked exactly like a stone, and seeing her condition, even Richard is terrified. She used to call that idol God. So Richard goes to the statue with Emmeline, where Richard prays to God that Emmeline gets well soon. Then, after resting for a while, Emmeline recovered, and now both of them started talking to each other. They started spending time with each other again, and both of them were now living together a little more. One day both of them were sitting together and eating fruits, then both of them came close and kissed each other, and after that, both of them were also intimate for the first time. He understood and felt that feeling now, and now both of them were very happy and used to romping many times a day. Many days pass, and one day, when Richard notices that Mr. Lion's health is deteriorating due to Emmeline's inability to devote time to Richard, he tells him, "Don't you love me anymore? Don't you like me now, then?" Emmeline says that "It's not like I'm sick. I feel like I have something in my stomach." Richard places a hand on Emmeline's stomach. So he feels some movement. And he asks Emmeline, "How did you move your stomach like this?" Emmeline tells Richard that she did not move her stomach. It's happening by itself. Emmeline was pregnant. But both of them were unaware of this one evening when Richard heard some sound, and he immediately ran away and reached that voice, where he saw that there was someone else on this island other than those two. They were the UAE's permanent tribes, who came here every time to complete their rituals, and this time he offers the sacrifice of his enemy to God as well. Seeing this, Richard immediately ran away in fear when he came back. He could hear Emmeline scream. Emmeline was giving birth to her child under a bat. She gives birth to a child with the help of Richard, which both of them are happy to see, and he brings her to his house, but the child was crying. Richard says it's hungry, and he tries to feed her water and food, but such a small child couldn't eat and drink all of this, and now neither of them knows what to do. Then Emmeline takes him in her lap and starts feeding her, and that kid comes down. He was a boy, and they both named that child Patty in memory of Patty. Richard then scolds Emmeline and warns her to go to another site on the island. Richard takes a raft to the old island where Patty's skeleton was discovered one day. He understands the structure of the body by looking at that skeleton. Both of them were very happy because of the child. He always loved her. A few months passed like this, and that child had grown up one day when all three were playing on the beach. Only then does Richard's father reach that island. He sees Richard, but he thinks that he is a permanent resident of this place. So he leaves there. Richard and Emmeline also saw that boat, but he no longer wanted to go to his home from this place. He was very happy here. One day they reached the old island where they had come with the Paddy for the first time. He remembers his past by looking at old things. Meanwhile, that child broke the red berry and put it in the raft, which neither of them knew, and on his way back, the kid accidentally dropped the rudder of the raft into the water. So Emmeline tries to take it, but she is not able to. So she calls Richard, who is left behind to take some fruit. He comes in and jumps into the water, and then Emmeline sees that a shark is coming after him. Now, in an attempt to save him, Emmeline kills the shark by throwing his other rudder. She has saved Richard, but now without a rudder, his raft was going away from that island, and after some time he goes to the middle of the ocean, where they had neither food nor water. They could quench hunger and thirst, but they had a small child with them, and they were worried about it. Then 2 days passed like this due to hunger. The child eats a berry, which Emmeline sees, but now it is of no use. Then Rich picks up the berry and gives half to Emmeline and half to himself. He decides that he too will give his life along with that child, but he is still alive. He was just sleeping because he had eaten very few berries, but these people eat berries and go to sleep. Then Richard's father sees his raft, and he immediately approaches that raft, where a man tells them that they are alive but just asleep, and here the movie ends. I hope you enjoyed the video, so click any of the 3 and enjoy next. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and please like the video and tell us in the comment how you liked the video. I look forward to seeing you soon.